This is Story Greenlight, and today we're going to be talking about things that I've learned from my backstory and some ideas that you can put into use to learn and grow from yours. What is up, my friend? Jeff Barch here with Story Greenlight, where we're all about helping creators like you empower themselves to spread your messages to the world and to create the impact that you are meant to make. If you are a longtime member of the Story Greenlight community, you are fantastic. I'm glad you're here. And if we are just getting to know each other, then this is the episode for you, because we're going to be digging into parts of my own backstory, not for the point of me running my mouth about moi. My goal is to share things that I've learned as my backstory has unfolded, help you understand where I'm coming from, and also to give you some ideas on how your backstory can shape and grow the way that you move forward today and tomorrow. So let's jump into this in the time-honored tradition of storytellers who start at the end and then rewind and fill in the gaps from the beginning. This is basically where things stand for right now. As of right now, I am a communicator, a coach, and a business builder. My primary background, the thing that I've done for most of my career, is broadcast television editing. I've spent over 20 years doing that in Los Angeles for ABC, NBC, Universal, Disney, ESPN, MTV, Travel Channel, Animal Planet, BET, I forget how many, CMT, how many other places, all the places, pretty much everyone except CBS, weirdly. But that's beside the point. I am a published author. I've been featured in Time Magazine. I've been featured in the USA Today and in the Associated Press. I've built online businesses supporting customers and clients over 40 countries across 6 continents. And I'm all about helping creators like you communicate your message to the world, because I believe that you matter, your message matters, and the world needs to hear what you have to say. It's taken about 40 years to get there. It's taken over 40 years to get there. And so I'm going to rewind and fill in parts of how that went down. Now, the thing is, from a very early age, I knew that I had things that I wanted to share with people, but I didn't know exactly what or how. And it literally started when I was 4 years old, and some people came over. They gave us, they donated this great big old upright piano. My parents measured it, and it was literally it was taller than it was long. Massive 1907 Bush and Lane upright piano. At the time, I was sharing a bedroom with 2 older brothers, and I had a whole list of songs that I had to sing every night before I went to sleep. I mean, we're talking Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, Jesus Loves Me, the ABCs, all those songs, my entire playlist, and it drove my brothers nuts. When we got this piano brought into our house, I went over and I started playing notes. And pretty soon after that, I started picking out melodies on it. And when that happened, I stopped singing songs at night. And my brothers were thrilled. They said, okay, you keep doing the piano thing, because now we can sleep at night. By the way, the second YouTube video I ever did was called Jeff's Story, No Creepy Vans Here. It has a whole bunch of cool stories and lots of fun, embarrassing pictures. You can check that out in the show notes. Fair warning, the opening is kind of weird. I thought it was cool at the time. Live and learn. Basically, for the first 20 years of my life, I was known as Jeff the Piano Guy. And later on, I started to become known as Jeff the Video Guy, but I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Playing the piano was where I really got started, by spending hours and hours by myself practicing things. Now, I was never the kid who spent 4 hours sitting at the piano, because even as a young kid, I was at the point where I couldn't just sit on the bench for that long without going stir crazy. So at the most, I probably only ever practiced 90 minutes to 2 hours max in a day. But I was pretty serious about it. And later on, I started getting into reading books and playing with Legos, and any of those, especially reading and playing with Legos, I just completely lost track of time. Hours upon hours upon hours, and boom, they're gone. That turned from just playing music to recording music. Someone gave me a little Casio keyboard when I was in junior high. At the time, it was something that you could get for $40, this tiny little keyboard from Radio Shack. And you could plug in cords to the back, and I plugged them into my brother's boom boxes, and I started recording this stuff. And then I figured out how you play back stuff from one boom box and play it on another and record it to another, and you could actually bounce tracks back and forth. And so I started learning about arranging and recording and composing and stuff. And I started doing that. And then I started upgrading my gear. I got a synthesizer, hooked it up to my PC, and started doing all this thing. And I started arranging and multi-track recording all this stuff. And by the time I got into high school, I was going to high school in a tiny little high school with a total population, 9 through 12, of 200 people in Northwest Iowa. And this was before, Adobe Premiere was in version 1 or something like that. It existed, but you could only get a little postage stamp size video screen playing 8 frames per second or something like that. It was super, super early. And so anything related to video production, it involved lots of gear, big camera sitting on your shoulder, all the stuff, and editing it on video machines that were the size of battle tanks. You hit the eject button, the lid just rose up like a gull wing door on an Italian car or something like that. So I was the only one in my entire high school who cared about that stuff, really. So I had to be the one-man band. And so I started learning about video production. And I realized that all this stuff put together, it came together when I would have my mom would literally drive me an hour to a state-funded media agency that had access to the editing equipment. It had in-house, and I was too young to drive by myself. Mom would drive me to the editing suite. I'd walk in with a stack of VHS tapes, and I'd walk out at the end of the day completely with my brain completely fried. But I loved it. Absolutely fell in love with it because I got to put all the pieces together, and I was able to do the music stuff too. And all the pieces came together. So did that all through high school, and I ended up in college, and I started off in college double majoring in Bible studies and music composition because the university that I was going at the time didn't have anything like video production. They did have some recording stuff, and they did have radio, which I ended up working at the radio station that the school owned. It was a 100,000 watt FM radio station, and I did shifts every Saturday night for about a year and a half, maybe about 2 years. Yeah, so I got into that, and that's where I learned that there's a reason why radio announcers, they put on their radio voice and they talk really high, and then they talk really low, and sometimes it sounds kind of cheesy, but if you talk like that in real life, people look at you like you're a dork. But I realized after listening to myself just talking on the air like this, and I sounded like I was only semi-conscious. And I realized, you know what? I should probably get more energy in my delivery. So thank you, KGBI FM, 100.7 FM, KGBI Omaha. That is where I learned. That's where I started learning about vocal presentation and all that kind of stuff. After 2 years in college there in Omaha, I ended up transferring out to Los Angeles to go to film school. And it was all on my own nickel, and my nickel ran out really quickly, and I had to drop out of college. Now, thankfully, I had worked my tail off when I was there, And I had impressed some of the film professors. And the head of the film department said, "It really is a bummer that you can't stay. We're sorry to see you go. Here are some phone numbers of some people that you need to call." So one of those phone numbers ended up being a guy who was the post-production supervisor for a show called Blind Date, which was a super, super early. I mean, this was in 2000, 1999, 2000, 2001 was when I first heard about Blind Date, the TV show. And they needed someone to help out their assistant editors at night. And so what I ended up doing was he asked me if I knew the Avid media composer, the Avid for short. And I said, not really, but I'd be happy to learn. And he said, okay, well, if you want to learn, then come in Friday and Sunday nights and we'll have one of our assistants teach you. So I did that. I came in at 10 o'clock. I think it was 9 or 10 o'clock Friday nights and Sunday nights until 3 a.m. And I did that for 6 months for free. And I later found out that I just kind of blew everyone's mind by showing up at all. And so when they had a position opened up for a full-time assistant editor during the day, I was the obvious choice because I'd been putting in the work and proving myself, and I'd learned the Avid and I was doing all the things. So that's how I got my first job in the entertainment industry, well, in television post-production in Hollywood. For a more visual example of my story in Hollywood, make sure you check out the collab video that I did with Tim Schmoyer of Video Creators. He and a camera crew flew out to Hollywood. We walked all around the city and we talked about storytelling and what it actually means to find success. And it was a really cool time. I actually did all the editing on the piece myself. And if you want to check that out, you can see it in the show notes. That show ran for multiple seasons. I got promoted to lead assistant editor, and then I got promoted from there to full editor, and I was able to make the jump to editor from there, and I have been editing as a full editor ever since. So I dropped out of college and got into TV in Hollywood, and I thought, I am in. I have arrived, So the next question is, okay, well, where do you go from here? And, I thought that this is what I've been building up to. This is what I'm supposed to do. And what I found was, I thought, well, if I do bigger shows, if I do shows that more people know about, then that'll make me happy. That's what I'll be going for. And it turns out that wasn't it. That was not it at all. I finally broke into doing network television shows. I started out with a whole bunch of cable stuff, a whole bunch of stuff for Animal Planet and Travel Channel and Discovery. And then I finally built up the laundry list of big enough credits that people say, oh, you're actually doing big shows. Cool. It's like you're a Boy Scout collecting badges. He's like ABC, NBC, Universal, Disney, ESPN, MTV, Apple, Amazon, blah, blah, blah. I actually haven't cut for Amazon as of right now. But point being, you're just collecting credits, and there's that mentality. And I'll tell you what did happen was it paid great money. And I didn't realize at the time that I was making end of life, what most people would consider end of life money at the age of 23. I started at the age of 23 was the first time that I earned over $100,000 a year from doing TV editing. I thought that was the thing that, you'd think that's what's going to make you happy, and it doesn't. Then one of the other interesting elements that came into play here was the idea of doing voiceover work. Now, it started out when I was cutting the first season of, and when I say cutting, industry parlance for editing, I was cutting the first season of a show on ABC called Super Nanny. And it was a show where a British nanny comes over to the States and helps American parents whip their families into shape, kind of a thing. Kids running rampant. And so I was editing on this first season, and my edit bay was right across the hallway from the post supervisor. And I heard her talking at one point about, we need to find a voice guy for the show. And so my ears perked up because I'd done radio in college already. We need someone family friendly, baritone, not too high, not too low, family friendly. It's a easygoing delivery. And I thought, good grief, I can totally do that. And I walked into her office and I said, hey, I've done some radio work. That sounds exactly like the kind of stuff that I can do. And basically, and she looked at me, and some of the, I ended up talking with some producers, and they basically said, we're actually looking for a professional voice person. So go back into your edit cave and edit like a good monkey, basically. And I said, no, this is dumb. I can do this. I brought in a good microphone and I wrote some copy and I imported the audio, and I did what we call some scratch tracks, and I put them together and edited them together like as if it was part of the TV show. And I burned it onto CDs, and I started handing out these CDs to the producers. Turns out one of the CDs ended up with the executive producer, and he calls me into his office one day. And he says, dude, this is really good. This is really good. Would you like to do scratch tracks for the show then that we send out to network? And I said, awesome. Yes, let's do it. I provided the value of being that family-friendly guy, having a close enough sound and doing the right thing and being there so they didn't have to go out hunting for someone else. And my scratch tracks went out to network at ABC. No one ever complained, and I ended up being the guy. I ended up being the voice guy for the show. For 6 seasons, for 13 episodes per season, the amount of money I made from putting myself out there and spitting into a microphone, it was literally enough to buy a house for cash in certain parts of the country. Tonight on Super Nanny, this week's featured family has 8 children turning their house into a disaster area. Can Joe turn this ship around before mom and dad jump overboard? When Super Nanny returns, that kind of a thing. I started out doing voiceover, and I thought, you know what? I should try doing more voiceover work. And I got hooked up with a casting agency who did a whole bunch of high-end commercial stuff, and they started calling me in for auditions, and I hated it. Auditioning is hard because when you audition for something as an actor or a voice talent, basically you're being called in to go up against 20 other guys that sound just like you. And the question becomes, how on earth are you going to set yourself apart? Well, high-level professionals know how to do that. I felt like I was always having to ask for permission. And that was the big thing that I learned from voiceover is it was a way easier to get voiceover work on shows that I was editing, and I was there and I could just put the scratch tracks in and say, hey, what do you guys think? Could I be the guy? And that worked a number of times. I mean, it worked out pretty well, but it was really, really hard to go out to a traditional audition and have people pick you out of the crowd. I wanted to take control instead of waiting for someone to choose me. And so that's why I didn't pursue voiceover. I wanted to do something more proactive that I had more control over. Meanwhile, I kept doing all the editing, and the question was, I still feel like I'm doing this different stuff. I mean, I'm the creative guy, and I was doing the editing and the music and the voiceover and all the things, but how does it all fit together? And I just didn't really know how that all fit together. What am I supposed to be doing? Then, about 5 years into my editing career, I read a book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And I will, one of the many things from that book is the big lesson that I took away from that was the rich don't work for money, money works for them. Most people who work a day job We trade our hours for dollars and we work for money. The rich set things up such that money works for them. They set things up that create money, that bring income in without them actually having to do the work. And so number one, that just pretty much turned my brain inside out. And I started thinking, okay, well, how can I do that? How can I get paid more than once than just me sitting in what was sometimes literally a closet with a computer workstation, making TV every day. So I thought, what if I could be a producer? Because then I could maybe have ownership in things and I could get paid more than once. And so for a couple years, I started going down the path of pursuing film producing. I very quickly found out, the more I learned about how things work for film producers, even very well-established film producers, and certainly television producers, good grief, television producers work like crazy people. And because the more I saw of producers, how they live and work, the less I wanted to be one. So I stopped pursuing that and I started pursuing online business building because it was the mid 2000s, 2007, 2008. And it was just at the beginning of the boom of internet information marketing. And I thought, hey, I've learned all this stuff in Hollywood about television editing and all this stuff, and people would love to learn about that, so I can teach that online. I have the secrets of Hollywood, and that fit right in line with the style of internet marketing at the time. It was the most hyped up, sleazy, manipulative, just blech. I mean, I ended up getting connected with an organization who, when I said, hey, I want to learn how to build a business. And they said, great, you need to do marketing. There is no business problem that can't be solved with better marketing and more sales. So you need to do marketing. And, I can't completely disagree with that because, in business, nothing happens unless you make a sale. So there is that. That is important. That is mission critical. You have to sell something in order for business to operate and to stay operating. But man, oh man, there is so much more to building a business than just marketing. I started my first business and it was called Edit Mentor. And the idea of Edit Mentor was I thought, man, when I was in film school, I would have loved to have access to high quality film and video footage to use as practice tools to edit. So I thought, hey, let's take the stuff that let's take my relationships that I built from film school and in the entertainment industry, let's license packages of footage and use them as learning tools for people who are wanting to edit. And so I started doing that, but here's what I didn't know that I soon learned later from another book that kind of turned my brain inside out called The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And the big idea is, it's one thing to be good at a thing. It is another thing entirely to run a business around the thing that you're good at. The E-Myth book frames it around the story of a gal who learned how to make amazing pies. And everyone says, oh, you make the most amazing pies, you ought to open up a bakery. And so she did, and it was just sucking the very soul out of her existence because of what she didn't know about building business. So that's what I didn't know when I was starting my first business, licensing packages of film and video footage. And I had no idea that you actually had to work mostly on selling and doing all that kind of stuff, then fulfillment and all this stuff. And it just kind of bumped along and I lost interest and it just didn't really work well. And again, I just ended up listening to voices who said, that's okay. You just got to do more marketing. You got to be sales and, business need. And I ended up in these high-end masterminds, the idea of a high-end coaching group. And they saw some of the stuff that I was doing. They said, whoa, that's amazing. You need to do that for businesses. Businesses need video, and you should do video for business. There was actually a time when they said, hey, you need to work with this gal. Let's call her Jane. Jane is the advisor to hundreds and hundreds of independent spa owners, and they need to have good looking video. So you guys should do a joint venture and make videos. And basically what ended up happening with that, I ended up realizing that I was going to have to be a production entity making spa videos. And I was going to be doing it. And then this other gal, Jane, she had to be part of the equations because it was her people and her brand that, she's teaching. And then of course the end client who owned the spa, they had to have a say because it was for their spa. And the more and more I thought about it, and it's just, I literally just, the thought of it turned my stomach. And it got to the point where I completely lost motivation to get out of bed in the morning. And it actually kind of freaked out my wife because she said, sweetie, I've never seen you not motivated. What's going on? So thankfully I ended up ending that joint venture. I said, hey, this isn't the right fit. It's not going to work. So thank you for being willing to explore this. And I ended that right there, which allowed me to continue banging my head against the digital wall for quite some time. Failure after failure, lame headline after wandering sales page after course that I spent months building that no one actually wanted to buy. And I didn't know how to sell it in the first place. And it just wasn't working. And I finally I started realizing what was happening. And basically I didn't really know what was driving me. I didn't know what all the through line was. It also wasn't the right time for what I wanted to do. At that time, I thought that I'd been dabbling in a whole bunch of unrelated things with all the music and the radio and the voiceover and the video and the editing and the business building and all that stuff. But all that stuff that I'd been learning wasn't just about music, TV, voiceover, marketing, or business building. The through line was all about communication and spreading messages that matter to the world and helping other people do that same thing for themselves. The way that YouTube and other platforms like YouTube have progressed, YouTube is no longer a new thing. Anyone can get on YouTube. Anyone can hit record. Anyone can hit upload. Bam, you're a content creator. How do you stand out from the millions of people who are doing all the same thing? Well, a big part of it is, and this applies to YouTube, but this goes way beyond YouTube, we have to have strong communication skills. We have to have a message. We have to know who our market is. We have to have the way that, we have to speak and shape our message in light of that audience and who they are and what they want, what they expect, what they don't expect, and how they behave on any given platform, all that stuff. And that is far bigger than any one platform. The world has evolved, and all that stuff that I've spent almost 40 years developing, it all comes together under that idea of communication and empowering and helping others to do that. That is what Story Greenlight is all about. One of the big things that I've come to realize about all this is that it came to light when I was doing an executive coaching session. I was in my entrepreneurial existential crisis a number of years back, and I paid $7,000 to an executive coach to go out for a one-day, one-on-one all day out in his private estate in Florida to figure out how to get some clarity and how to move me forward. And some of the things that he was having me do when I was preparing to go out there for that day was he literally said, write an autobiography, a bullet point autobiography of your entire life. And the reason being, he said, the things that we gravitate towards as children almost always provide clues for the things that bring us the most fulfillment as adults. The things that we love the most as kids often bring clues to where we should go as grown-ups. And, because the fact is, when we're kids, we don't have all that baggage from the years of adulthood. So our motivations tend to be more pure. So, or at least less filtered. So when you have yours truly spending hours and hours and hours by myself as a kid, that's perfect for a TV editor spending hours and hours and hours in a closet or a room with a window on a nice gig, alone with a computer. Just even being okay with that, it's a unique match. Hours playing with Legos. I'm taking those little building blocks, those hundreds and hundreds of options, thousands upon thousands of options from all these little Lego building blocks, and I realized that is the exact thing that I've spent so many years doing as a television editor. Instead of taking Lego blocks, I'm just taking picture, sound, music, ideas, story, graphics, emotion, all that stuff. It's a whole different kind of Lego building blocks. I can look backwards and see, well, of course, this really lights me up, because that's something that I've always loved to do. And the fact of the matter is, I'm now expanding that idea into the building blocks, and I'm not just using, music and sound and picture and sound and graphics and stuff. Now I'm expanding into the building blocks of ideas and people as I continue to grow my team at Story Greenlight and learning their strengths and how we can best work together to serve our clients and community. So that's been a huge thing that I have been able to look backwards and say, okay, well, those things as a kid really do inform what my strengths are as an adult. The other thing that I came to realize that, the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad has so many great things. One of the frustrating things that came from that book for me for a long time was the idea of your day job. And so Kiyosaki talks about how a job is an acronym that stands for just over broke. And he says, if you're trying to build long-lasting wealth from a job, it will never happen. And, and I'm not going to disagree with him. In broad strokes, it is far more likely that you will build significant wealth by doing something that doesn't require hours for dollars. Now, the challenge with that comes when I started thinking that all day jobs are bad. What I didn't know at the time was I was literally in the perfect day job for my skill set on the single best place on the face of the planet for me to do this as a storyteller in Hollywood, the storytelling capital of the world. The kid who loved spending hours playing by himself with Legos got to sit in a room with a computer and put together the Lego building blocks of television. It was incredible. Still is. I love to do it. I absolutely love to do it. It lights me up. It scratches that creative itch. And I love building those kind of ideas and telling those stories and putting them out into the world, especially if they have messages that, that help people think about whatever is good, whatever is pure, lovely, whatever is righteous, all these good things. If you're spreading light into the world, man, that is an incredible privilege to be part of that. Oh, but shoot, it's a job, so that means it's all bad, right? No, it's not necessarily. It doesn't have to be either or. Now, the thing that I didn't know for a long time is that there are a lot of people who don't like their day jobs. So if that's the position that you find yourself in, number one, it's not just you. You're far from alone in that. And I would say, consider using that as motivation. What can you be building? What can we be building outside the day job so that you can get out of that day job as soon as possible? Having said that, if you are in the position of you actually like what you do, there are some members in our green room, our the community at Story Greenlight, who've literally said, I love my day job and I'd have to do a lot to replace my income. And I don't know if I'm willing to do what it takes to build online business or to sell, to build these digital assets that will do that. That is an incredibly self-aware place to be. One does have to come to a point where you say, okay, what do I really want? What do I really want to pursue? And what am I building? What supports you? Is the day job the only way that you can support yourself? I will say the flip side from earning over 6 figures a year since my early 20s in Los Angeles, that meant, which is a very expensive city to live. And it didn't feel expensive when I was in my 20s. I was just like, I literally had money stacking up in my checking account. And then you buy a house, you get married, you have kids, you learn how to use credit cards, and it goes on from there. And all of a sudden, you have a standard of living that is difficult to sustain otherwise. So you keep doing what you've been doing. So in order for me to replace my income that I've been earning for years and years from television editing, I have to have online business that is firing on all cylinders. I can't have an online business, the businesses that just sort of work. Everything's got to be slamming and working really well. I'm willing to do that. I've been working to build that for a long time now, and it is getting closer and closer every day. So that's the balance. That's the balance you have to strike. I mean, what is the thing that supports you? If the day job is what supports you, that is honorable, especially if it's supporting you and a family. That is 100% honorable. The question then is, what lights you up? What do you love? If the day job sucks your soul out, maybe it might be worth finding another day job that doesn't suck your soul out. But if the day job is tolerable, what if you were to say, hey, the day job is okay. It provides the financial baseline. Now what can I build beyond the day-to-day? Gonna stop here. And again, my goals for going into all this are twofold. It's not just to have me run my mouth and talk about me. My goal is to share some of these stories so that you can get to know some of my perspective a little bit better, find some points that we have in common, and also to share some lessons that I've learned along the way and see how they might have some application in your life. And having said that, I do have a question for you. It really did blow my mind when I connected those dots about what I loved as a kid and how that relates to what I love and what lights me up all those years later. I would be curious to know, what have you seen from your childhood that either has or could have a connection in your life as a grown-up? How has that worked for you? Drop a comment, shoot me a DM, and I would love to keep talking about that. And the fact of the matter is, there will be lots more stories to be told. There will be lots more episodes to come. And I'm glad you're here. So if this content is helpful, make sure you hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you happen to be. And if you want to take your creativity and content creation to the next level, get started now at storygreenlight.com. That is storygreenlight.com.